The Democratic Republic of Congo is once again at the center of a deadly conflict. South African soldiers deployed under the Southern African Development Community (SADC) mission are facing immense challenges, and some have paid the ultimate price. But why are they in the DRC, and what exactly is going wrong? Who should be held responsible for the losses? More importantly, is this just another chapter in Africa's long history of foreign-fueled conflicts? In today's episode, we break down the complex web of geopolitics, regional power struggles, and historical tensions that have drawn South Africa into the conflict. We examine the role of the M23 rebels, the simmering tensions between the DRC and Rwanda, and the hidden forces that continue to destabilize the region. Stay with us as we uncover the truth, and don't forget to share your thoughts in the comments. Before we continue, welcome to Pan-African Lens. If you're passionate about Africa's diverse cultures, rich history, development, and the contemporary issues shaping the continent and its diaspora, you've come to the right place. Be sure to subscribe and join the conversation as we explore these powerful stories together. Let's continue. Now picture this: South African troops, far from home, engaged in a conflict that seems to have no end in sight. It's a scenario that raises countless questions and stirs emotions across the continent. But before we point fingers, let's take a step back and examine the intricate web of factors at play. The SADC mission, a noble cause, the Southern African Development Community mission in the Democratic Republic of Congo, SADC, was launched with lofty goals. South Africa, alongside Malawi and Tanzania, stepped up to the plate to support their fellow SADC member, the DRC government, in restoring peace and stability. But is this mission truly living up to its promise? The DRC's roots can be traced back to May 2023, when the Southern African Development Community approved the deployment in response to the deteriorating security situation in eastern DRC. The South African National Defence Force, SANDF, was chosen to lead this crucial mission, carrying the hopes and expectations of an entire region on its shoulders. The mandate more than meets the eye. On paper, the DRC's mandate sounds straightforward: protect civilians, disarm armed groups, and help implement the ceasefire agreement between the DRC and Rwanda. However, the reality on the ground paints a far more complex picture. Are our South African brothers and sisters being asked to do the impossible? The legal foundation for this deployment rests on the SADC Mutual Defence Pact of 2003, which states that any armed attack perpetrated against one of the state's parties shall be considered a threat to regional peace and security, and shall be met with immediate collective action. 1. This pact underscores the spirit of unity and collective security that the SADC strives to embody. But as we've seen time and time again, the gap between ideals and reality can be vast, especially in the tumultuous landscape of Central Africa. The Rwanda factor, a thorn in the side of peace. Now let's address the elephant in the room: Rwanda's alleged support for the M23 rebel group. This contentious issue has been a significant source of tension between South Africa and Rwanda. How has this diplomatic rift affected the mission's effectiveness? The M23 rebel group, with its alleged ties to Rwanda, has been a persistent source of instability in the eastern DRC. Their actions can be traced back to the aftermath of the 1994 genocide, a dark chapter in African history that continues to cast long shadows across the region. The complex interplay of historical grievances, ethnic tensions, and geopolitical maneuvering has created a powder keg that threatens to explode at any moment. The M23 menace, a force to be reckoned with. The M23 rebels have been a persistent thorn in the side of peace efforts in the eastern DRC. Their actions have led to widespread suffering among civilian populations. But are they merely pawns in a larger geopolitical chess game? The impact of M23's activities on civilians has been nothing short of devastating. While precise numbers are hard to come by, it's clear that their presence has resulted in mass displacements, widespread fear, and untold suffering. The rebels stand accused of committing a wide range of atrocities, including mass killings, rape, and other forms of sexual violence. They've even targeted camps for internally displaced persons, further exacerbating the humanitarian crisis in the region. The international community has not remained silent in the face of these atrocities. The United Nations and various human rights bodies have consistently condemned the violence perpetrated by M23 and called for an end to the bloodshed. They've also demanded accountability for the perpetrators. But in the complex web of Central African politics, justice often remains elusive. The South African dilemma, unprepared and outgunned. Here's where things get really interesting, my friends. Despite their extensive peacekeeping experience, our South African forces find themselves in a precarious position. South African soldiers are no strangers to peacekeeping operations. They've served with distinction in numerous missions across the continent, accumulating valuable experience along the way. In fact, they've been part of the UN stabilization mission in the DRC, MONUSCO, almost since its inception in 1991. This wealth of experience should, in theory, make them well prepared for the challenges they face in the current mission: budget woes and equipment blues. However, the reality on the ground tells a different story. Years of budget cuts have left the South African National Defence Force, SADC, struggling to maintain its equipment and modernize its forces. With less than 1% of GDP allocated to defence compared to the global average of 2%, how can we expect our troops to effectively carry out their mission? 1. The impact of these budget constraints is far-reaching. It affects everything from the maintenance of existing equipment to the ability to conduct regular training exercises. The result is a gradual erosion of the SADC's overall readiness and capability. In a high-stakes environment like the Eastern DRC, where every piece of equipment and every bit of training can make the difference between life and death, these shortcomings are particularly glaring, outgunned and outnumbered. The harsh reality is that our South African soldiers lack essential resources, including adequate air support and modern equipment. They're facing a well-equipped adversary with outdated tools. Is this a fair fight? The SADC takes its own equipment on missions to ensure self-sufficiency and meet specialized needs. However, much of this equipment is old and prone to maintenance issues, leading to shortages that severely impact the force's ability to carry out its duties effectively. 1. In the rugged terrain of Eastern DRC, where mobility and firepower can make all the difference, these equipment shortages put our troops at a significant disadvantage. Perhaps most alarmingly, South African troops in the DRC lack essential resources such as adequate air support and attack helicopters. This severely limits their ability to respond quickly to threats and provide close air support for ground troops. 1. Despite having one of the most capable air forces in Africa, the SADC is unable to deploy its Gripen fighter jets and Ruivolk attack helicopters due to maintenance issues and a lack of spare parts. This leaves our ground forces vulnerable and less effective against well-equipped adversaries like the M23. The bigger picture, a crisis of continental proportions. As we ponder the fate of our South African brothers and sisters in the DRC, we must also consider the broader implications for our continent. Regional unity, a dream deferred. The deployment of SADC has not been without controversy. Rwanda's opposition to the mission raises questions about regional unity and cooperation. Are we witnessing the unraveling of Pan-African solidarity? Rwanda has vocally opposed the deployment of SADC, arguing that it undermines regional unity and cooperation. 1. This stance has created tension not just between Rwanda and South Africa, but within the broader SADC community. It highlights the complex web of alliances, historical grievances, and competing interests that often complicate peacekeeping efforts on our continent. Moreover, there are concerns within the DRC itself about the presence of multiple foreign forces. Given the relative ineffectiveness of previous interventions, many Congolese are understandably skeptical about the potential impact of yet another foreign military presence on their soil. 1. This skepticism raises important questions about the legitimacy and effectiveness of regional peacekeeping efforts. The future of African peacekeeping. This crisis forces us to confront some uncomfortable truths about the state of African peacekeeping efforts. Are we truly equipped to handle our own security challenges? Or are we still reliant on external interventions? The SADC mission in the DRC was initially authorized to have 5,000 troops from Malawi, South Africa, and Tanzania. However, as of late January 2025, only about 1,300 troops had been deployed. 1. This significant shortfall raises serious questions about the mission's ability to achieve its objectives and highlights the challenges faced by regional organizations in mobilizing resources for peacekeeping operations. A call to action: what can we do? As conscious Pan-Africanists and anti-neocolonialists, we cannot simply sit back and watch this tragedy unfold. It's time for us to raise our voices and demand action. The best approach to peace and stability in the DRC requires a concerted effort by all regional actors: the DRC, Rwanda, Uganda, Burundi, Kenya, and the Southern African Development Community. We must address the underlying causes of the conflict, which necessitates political dialogue involving not just regional actors, but also the UN, the international community, and most importantly, the Congolese people themselves. For South Africa, this crisis should serve as a wake-up call. It's time for some critical reflection on the future roles of its military. The equipment shortages and challenges faced by the SADC raise serious concerns about its ability to carry out its core mandate of protecting South Africa, its territorial integrity, and its people in accordance with the Constitution. The tragedy unfolding in the DRC highlights the dire need for the South African National Defence Force to be redesigned, modernized, and adequately funded. Only then can it become more effective and capable, ready to meet the immediate challenges it faces, like aging equipment, and ensure the security of South Africa and contribute meaningfully to regional stability. 1. Conclusion: a time for reflection and action. The crisis in the DRC and the plight of South African soldiers serve as a stark reminder of the challenges facing our continent. It's a call for us to critically examine our approach to conflict resolution and peacekeeping. As we move forward, let's keep asking the tough questions and pushing for solutions that prioritize African lives and interests. How can we pressure our governments to prioritize diplomatic solutions over military interventions? What role can civil society play in promoting peace and reconciliation in the DRC? How can we support the families of the fallen South African soldiers while also questioning the wisdom of their deployment? The path to true Pan-African unity and prosperity may be fraught with obstacles, but it's a journey we must undertake together. We must demand greater transparency from our governments about military deployments, push for increased investment in our defense forces, and advocate for comprehensive region-wide approaches to conflict resolution. What are your thoughts on this complex issue? How do you think we can work towards a more peaceful and stable Africa? Share your perspectives in the comments below, and let's keep this crucial conversation going. Together, we can forge a path towards a more united, peaceful, and prosperous Africa. Thank you for watching Pan-African Lens. If you enjoyed this video and want to continue celebrating Africa's heritage and discussing its future, please like, share, and subscribe. Your support helps grow our community and keeps the conversation alive. See you in the next video.